Marty Fishelman. We're doing Focus on Filmmakers. Today we are meeting with Johnny Semerad and Dara Semerad as well.
So yeah, we're a father-daughter production team. We actually live in separate countries, and she lives in Canada and I live in New York. And she says that's the key to our getting along so well. But I started off as a traditional. I studied fine arts at Pratt Institute, and that's uh, back when the computer revolution came out. And I have conversations all the time with people now where they're like, I went to art school or my kid went to art school and but it's all computers. So I went through that whole thing and when you look at it, most art is done on computers these days. And now I feel like we're going through that revolution again where we're doing it's not computers, but AI. It's like the software to go along with the computers.
We're gonna help yourself, Dara. How did your interest get into this?
Well, I internshipped for him at his company like when I was in high school, so I knew the ropes already going into it, and I actually graduated during COVID. So it was like one of the easier transitions for me to kind of jump into this, and our dynamic, we work really well together. I like being flexible. Like if I have to go to New York, I'll be there. I'm obviously in Canada most of the time, so it just works out really well.
And then had you've been doing conventional filmmaking before moving into the AI stuff, correct? What sort of bridged your gap from uh, regular techniques into more of the AI techniques?
Yeah, so I started doing special effects, and most of the stuff that we do is we direct and we do the effects. And when you do commercial, a lot of times people come to you and they're like, "Here, do the whole thing and give it to us finished." So we were doing the more traditional shooting with actors and all of that. And I was also always, for as long as I can remember, always doing little shorts to kind of, just shamelessly self-promote our techniques and come up with new techniques and stay on top of things. And, we'd enter them in film festivals and we just promote to get more commercials.
So then
And
I'm sorry, go on.
sorry. And then we were working on this one spot, a tree once grew here, and we were doing it totally with traditional uh, animation techniques. And I was going to do a scan build where I scanned the stumps and I scanned the branches and I scanned everything. And then just trying to stay on top of technology, I would always play around with AI. And one day in Midjourney, I typed in, desolate wasteland with a tower made out of garbage, and there was the vision. And it literally saved me like 6 months on that project. And then last year we had like 40 minutes of animation, which is a lot in film festivals. And we were like, why aren't we doing our own show or movie? And that's what we're doing now. So,
What's sort of like the method now that you're working with different systems?
so the one of the things about me being a like an artist and knowing how to draw is, I can still do like, traditional animation and stuff. So how we do it now is uh, we write the script, we plan it out, and the thing about it now is when you design characters, you go in and we start using text to image in either Runway or in Midjourney. Those are the two I spend most of my time in. And you start to design the characters, but you can also go in and draw things on top. Like if you're not getting the design just right, I can go in and draw it on top of that. And then one of the really cool things is once you get two or three images of the character, you can then take it into Runway and do like a 360, do multiple poses, things like that, and you can build your own library. So once you have your own library, you can, have the character and say, Johnny walking. It'll give you a still frame of that character walking, Johnny sleeping, and it'll give you a character, an image of that character sleeping. So it's kind of like you build your own library, which is like a huge time saver. And then Runway also has motion capture called Act One, which is you record yourself or you record the actor, and then it'll take that character that you just built and put the two of them together. So, you're now that character is now talking.
Nice. Now, when you were creating designing, have you ever, has it come across where the software is designed came up with something like, oh, that's new and original. I would not have thought of that.
That happens all the time. And sometimes like you have when you direct, you hire a DP, you hire wardrobe, you hire makeup, you hire prop, and you kind of expect them to be better at their job than you are at their job. So if a makeup person comes to you with something that you didn't think of, you have to be open to it. And especially with wardrobe and things like that. Like if you have an idea of wardrobe, and then the wardrober says, no, that this is better, you have to be open to that. And so often with AI, like it'll Dutch a camera or it'll do something that is kind of against filmmaking rules, but you're kind of like, well, that looks nicer than what I had in my head. And you have to constantly be open to that.
So basically, what you're saying, artificial intelligence, better collaborators than human intelligence who have want things and have opinions and want craft services versus the machine you can just come in and they'll give you a whole slurry of ideas that you can pick and choose from.
I wouldn't go that far because I still work with a lot of people and I still have like my trust group that I show everything to, and kind of I'm stuck here, I'm stuck there. It's kind of like having what I say is kind of like having the worst assistant in the world. It's like sometimes you'll type in like bird's eye view and it'll give you a picture of a bird's eye. Things like that are, like in a window, a window stoop is the inside, a window stoop is the outside, and a window stool is the inside. And AI will give you a window with a stool. It just, there are things it just doesn't um, understand and you can't explain. But it does come up with stuff and it does make it a lot faster, and it has really increased our production value faster.
And so, as do you almost see a new, since everything is prompted for the prompt to video software, do you almost see a new sort of film language evolving in terms of describing a scene to be able to communicate more like I understand that runway, if I type this in, I'm going to get this. So versus as if I was talking to a person, let's change it up. This is how I need to talk to the software to get the results I want. Like it's like a new language evolving as this process goes forward, or is it almost becoming more of a writer's medium?
It definitely um, you're yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying because when you prompt things, also it's like the order that you put them sometimes makes a big difference. If you put something first, there are things that if you're making a person and you choose the vertical or the horizontal, it'll give you a vertical person. So there's definitely the language that you talk to it. And the other thing that you learn is you're doing things like, if I was to do a car without wheels, I would say a car with no wheels. But if I was prompting, it would be a wheelless car. And so there's definitely like a different language that I don't use with normal people at all. Yeah, and it's funny because I think lots of times people are like, oh, the AI is getting so much better. It's really understanding me better. I'm really training it. And in reality, I think it's training us and really teaching us how to talk to it better because it is a totally different type of thing. And you can ask to try to get, it doesn't handle negative things that well. Sometimes it handles more positive. Sometimes it handles like if you want to say a complicated thing like walking and stopping and looking around, and it doesn't understand that, but if you just say walking, it understands that.
Like, are there any things you run into that are kind of frustrating you now that you're like, all right, I need to do a workaround in terms of like there's a limitation to the software. Do I work within the limitation? Are you just waiting until an improvement comes along that you can, all right, they fixed this problem, now I can go forward. It's almost like when film first started out, black and white, no audio. So the films that were made sort of emphasize more of a physical nature versus as it once sound and color got involved, it changed again. So do you see almost limitations that could be lifted in AI filmmaking right now?
Yeah, one of the things right now is that it doesn't handle like the subtleties of a lot of emotions very well. So if you tell it to laugh, it'll give you like ah, but if you say giggle, it doesn't, it might do nothing. And so, I think that as it, as things grow, and I've been there where somebody said, "Oh, can we do this?" And we're like, "No, the AI won't do that." And then 2 weeks later, we get an update and like, "Oh yeah, we can do that now." So it's a constant, Act One was a big step, Gen 3, it was a big step where it kind of started giving us more and more performance-based stuff, which is why we always go to, movies and TV is to get, that emotional connection.
And do you think, because I've heard from some people say that they can't, or the AI doesn't create that emotion, that you need an actor for that? I personally don't understand. I connect with software all the time and I'm having a beautiful relationships all over the place. Do you think that possibility of creating that uh, emotional response is in the potential of what we have or will be evolving soon?
Yeah, I've found like everybody there seems to be like everybody has their own uncanny valley
Right.
and especially like gamers will friends of mine who are gamers and I often show my work to people who aren't in the business, just people who are smart and but friends of mine have shown me stuff like, isn't this cool? I'm like, that's creepy, and there's stuff where I was at the Runway Film Festival, the lady who leads up the Tribeca Film Festival said, yeah, they got to have all their fingers. So yeah, I think it's only you know and that actually leads the conversation into the voices because we use AI voices all the time and they're really good for interviews and broadcasts and things like that. But as far as like the subtle emotions and stuff, they're not there yet. So we still use actors and we still use performance-based stuff to get because that's what Act One does is you film the actor saying the lines and performing it, and then it matches the two together. Vigil does the same thing on a broader way where it does like if you act out the whole thing, it kind of does the motion capture and puts the character and the performance together.
Excellent. So would you ever see, 'cause I mean, I feel everything, there's an inevitability to it that, the performances will just keep improving. So do you see a time when an AI character is generated that can then be transferred over to other films? Like and he's not Jason Statham, the beekeeper. He's Jason Statham, then another guy seeking vengeance for an oppressed person. But now it's just this AI character who has sort of developed a persona and a following and can go from film to film. And ultimately, like, you know, maybe humans are relegated to live theater, and then every broadcast can now be conducted with AI, even if it just becomes a matter of economics. Like I'm not paying
It's
$30 million for an actor now. I have some servers up.
I think everything comes down to economics, it seems, and the thing is where I don't know if the AI characters are going to get like um if they're going to replace actors completely. In fact, I don't think they do. I think where they're going to replace is like, stuntmen and dangerous stunts and things like that, where, if you look at the Matrix now, you can tell the CG people from the real people. And, but if some of the stuff they're doing now, you really can't tell who's CG and who's practical. So I kind of feel like it's gonna come to the point where yeah, like all dangerous stunts and the really they're going to up the bar on that and make more and more dangerous things. And but I think what's going to happen though is when the costs drop, you start seeing more movies getting made, and I think that's going to more than offset the amount of jobs that are lost.
Do you think, though, as things become more sophisticated and almost like your barriers to entry drop, is it just going to be more great things made, or just, more Big Macs? Like everyone's just going to make their everyone's going to be a filmmaker. And so you're going to be flooded with like a lot of like, you know, an hour and a half of fluff and it goes on versus, or is it going to spark a new level of creativity?
Um, yeah, that's because both things are happening at the same time right now. Yeah, like when I was a kid, my uncle had a little Super 8 camera, and each reel was 3.5 minutes, and on that 3.5 minutes, you get a little Halloween picture, a little Thanksgiving, a little Christmas, a little New Year's, a little Valentine's Day, and then you get, the next year's. And now, when people do like their wedding videos, sometimes it's like 2.5 hours of like, just recording with no cuts or anything. And so I do feel like that. And when I talk to filmmaker or people, we go to a lot of film festivals. People are like, yeah, we're getting a lot of junk because a lot of people can do bad ideas. But at the same time, when there's a little experiment, and they do it at art schools all the time, where they tell one class, do the best piece of art you can, and then they take another class and tell them, just do as much as you can. And the guys who are doing as much as they can always end up with the better art. And there is something to just being able to come up with ideas and execute ideas that you know spark that creativity and come up with ideas that we never would have had, and come up with voices that we never would have had. And it is, and even for us, we're working on a pilot for a TV show we're trying to get developed now. And 2 years ago, without AI, that just financially wasn't an option. There was, for us to get into that world, just it was just way too expensive. Like a Pixar movie is like $1 million a minute. So I kind of feel like it's going to be the best of both worlds, where we're going to get a lot of junk, and we're also going to get a lot of stuff that we've never would have gotten with 20 years ago.
As the prompt reading gets better and more interpretive and just connecting with its user more intimately, that your role may just fade away in terms of anyone could just say, all right, I want a movie where a guy rescues a dog and he flies to space and he meets a princess and then they save the universe. And then it's just taken from there and a totally customized, personalized film is made in that moment. So is there almost we're putting directors putting themselves out of business?
Yeah, I think, well, there's a couple things with that is, um, when I first got into this business, it was even much more expensive, and the equipment was unbelievable. And I would always, like, wherever I worked, it always seemed like the guy who owned the company was like the least talented one, and it was because he could come up with a bankroll. That was his skill, was getting the money to start the company, not doing the work. So as the computers get more and more cost effective, I think that now it comes down to talent. And yeah, I totally believe that there will become a day where even now, like, if you took all the Hubbard writings of Dune and put them into a library and said, write one where Paul dies at the end, it would do it. Would it do it well? I don't know. And that's kind of where I think what's going to happen is that, you know, you might be able to make a movie that you want to watch, but I don't think it still is going to take skill of the director, skill of the writer to write a movie that everybody's going to want to watch. So I kind of feel like, if people are doing movies at much less of a cost, that a lot of those messages may become much more personalized messages, but I don't necessarily see that as like a bad thing either.
Right. So it's okay in terms of whether you're making movies for tens of people or millions of people. I mean, it ultimately stays subjective. It's, whether it's, someone's considering something an art film now versus something like a mass product. It's up and down the board. It's how the internet democratized everything and everyone was a YouTube creator. Now, I don't know, it has the ability to change. Do you think it has the ability to change tastes in terms of, well, previously films were made by a handful of people with the resources. Now they can be made by anybody. Is there going to be a new standard of this is good versus this is not good? Is there going to be a place for almost like, you know, your artisanal film, like this was crafted by all 100% human made versus an AI film, almost, like your Big Mac versus a Wagyu steak of one is mass produced and for to appeal to everybody, and one has like authentic ingredients that was farm to table.
Yeah, I definitely think, when we used to do TV commercials, we would do we would do 30-second little movies that ran for 2 or 3 years. Now when you do a TV commercial, they're 15 seconds tops. They're often much shorter and they're kind of like throwaway on your lead. So I think there's the kind of like the throwaway stuff where people are just building content and putting content out there. And then there's going to be stuff that aspires to be more and is going to attract more people.
What right now would you say is your ideal dream project? Like you could make anything. Bottomless resources, your software is top notch. It's all there. Is there a vision you would love to see filled? A project that you've had in your drawer, you're like, this is it. I want to make this is going to happen now.
Yeah, so right now we're working on a pilot for a TV show, and it's kind of, you know, some of the ideas are definitely catered to AI, but it's a um, animated sci-fi comedy, which is something I would want to see, which is something, like Guardians of the Galaxy or Rick and Morty, that type of thing. And it's the basis of it is that it kind of like an aliens where they don't send the best and the brightest into space. They spend like expendable people into space, and it's going to become a drudgery. And so these people, robots and aliens, are stuck on a spaceship trying to work together and discovering new worlds and stuff. And so that's the project that we're working on now.
Is it AI is being used to generate ideas? Is it used to do the visuals, or do you basically have it? And at this time, AI is just sort of a tool among other tools to make it happen.
Yes, we came up with we came up with the idea. A friend of mine who's a writer helped me write the pilot, and I showed it to a lot of my creative group to get feedback on it and stuff. And then we're using AI to do all the imagery. Once the characters are designed, we're building the libraries of the characters, and then we're animating in there, and we're we're using some AI voices, but we're using, I don't know what the percentage is, but for the main characters, we're going to be recording voices and recording performances, and then the sound effects, we're using a sound effect library. There are programs out there where you can put a picture in and it'll give you a sound effect, but they're very hard to control. And we're dabbling with AI music, but we're not having a ton of success with that yet. But so it's going to be like pretty much all AI visuals with us working on it, but it's a different process in that, we have a script, we have a vision, we have to go get that. And sometimes you have what they call happy accidents on set, which AI gives you a lot of happy accidents. Like sometimes it'll give me a picture like, oh, I got to use that for something. And like and I've been on set 1,000 times where like you have a line, you show it to the lawyers, you show it to the clients, you get on there, and then on the spot, the actor comes up with a better one, and I've or a funnier one, and I've seen that where humor is so difficult to manifest, where somebody will say something and it'll be funny, and then you'll work on it for 2 hours and it doesn't get any funnier. So it's definitely you have to be open to that. But if you can't have a plan of we're just going to go on set and shoot a bunch of stuff and cut it together later, and you can't do that with AI either. You kind of have to have a plan of where you're going, or you definitely have to have a plan of where you're going.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing your 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 show come out. I love a sci-fi comedy, of course. Now, like, what is your favorite film and why is it Short Circuit?
I have a ton of great films I love. Any Ghibli film, I still go to the Ghibli Fest just to see them on the big screen. That they've really influenced me a lot with the visuals and anime and things like that.
Definitely. Well, it seems like there's a chart, a path that can be followed to make more great films using the software we have now in the mold of Ghibli and Walt and Gromit. I look forward to what you guys are making. I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to speak with us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming.
Talk to you soon.